Okay, if we're ready to get started, I'm waiting for you guys at this point. Over here, I like to have things settled before we get started. Is it going over there? You good? Okay, then, close the door, sit. I'll get distracted. Okay? I'm easily distractible. Like these guys. Hey, when I speak through this, can it be heard outside the musalla? I think so. If you're outside the musalla, you should come into the musalla, take a seat. You're ready to be with us, inshallah. You can? Oh, that's good to know. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Okay, so raise your hand if this is the first time that you're hearing me talk here and talk. Okay, so you guys are not here for the last two. I think the others were. Okay, good. Inshallah, some other people might show up. They usually miss the good stuff when they come late. Those of you who are here and you're here again, you're probably invested in what we've been talking about, which is good. And for the adults especially, actually, that probably means that you maybe have kids or you're in a position to want to influence kids and the younger people in our community. And we have no shortage of people who are willing to do that, no shortage of need for people who are willing to do that type of thing. Okay, we have a lot of kids in the community. We don't have enough older people who are taking on roles and tasks to actually influence the kids. Especially brothers, okay, especially brothers. If you go to an Islamic school in America, the female to male ratio is about literally 25 to 1, if not more. Brothers tend to feel like, kids can be annoying. Kids are annoying. They annoy adults. When they're disrespectful, they're annoying. When they don't follow directions, they're annoying. And brothers tend to not deal with that well. And they tend to just quit on it then. Sisters have a little more tolerance for putting up with that and patience with it. What's this guy's name right here in the yellow shirts? This little guy. Thank you. Okay, so some tips for the adults first about dealing with kids. Those of you who were here before, you'll notice when I started both sessions, and I did the same thing yesterday, gave the same kind of talk at Masjid Ibadur Rahman in Brooklyn Park yesterday. I started by talking to the kids about how, as a teacher, when I speak, if a kid starts talking or he stops paying attention, what did I tell them that I would do? Yeah.
Just stop.
I'd stop talking, okay? And this is a studied skill that works if a teacher does it. And it's one of the ways to get kids to actually listen. Because some people, they've been impressed in the sessions just by the fact that I'm able to hold the kids' attention for so long. Because a lot of times in the masajid, or on the weekend schools, we try to hold a talk for the kids. And if you got more than 5 kids, certainly if you got 20, 25, 30 kids, they start getting all squirmy, they start side talking, all that type of stuff when you're talking. And it's awkward when the person speaking is speaking, but most of the kids are talking. and everyone's distracted and there's no benefit in it. So it's like a key skill that you need of knowing how to get kids to actually be quiet and listen. And with any behavior you're trying to teach kids, the behavior that is allowed is the behavior that you let them get away with. And that's the real expectation. So you can tell kids not to talk, you can tell kids not to hit each other, you can tell kids not to run out here, but if you tell them that and then they do it and you let them do it, what you've actually taught them is, I can tell you to do something and my words mean nothing because I just let you do it. Dealing with kids and managing kids and conditioning kids and raising kids, it is an actions speak louder than words thing. There's no getting away from that, like most things in life. Also, too, kids do much better in any situation when you set the behavior expectations of the situation up front for them. Okay, so if we're going to sit and have a class, we want to tell the kids what good listening looks like, how you should be sitting, what will happen if you're not following the expectations, like I did before. Just explaining that to them out front is a big thing. Same thing if you're taking the kids out to the park. You're taking the kids to the Mall of America. You're taking them wherever, on the car ride there, whatever. You talk to them about what the behavior expectations are and what will happen if they don't follow them. Same thing here, okay? There should be set expectations for the kids of, when we have a break, how they act here, how they act there. Okay, I don't mind, me personally, it's fine, they move around a little bit out here, but it shouldn't be happening out like where you first come in, because it's going to be disrupting to someone when they first enter the masjid. When it comes to kids talking in the masjid, okay, this is something that we have to deal with. When I joined the community in 2007, when I became Muslim, I can remember back in those days, I was impressed because if you're in Jum'ah or you're in some sort of dars or something, and the kids start talking, 2 or 3 adults, they snap them, they get them to be quiet right away. Okay. Now, we've stopped doing that because number one, as adults, we're afraid of the kids because American kids are petulant and they complain and they push back. So people are just afraid to confront the kids. That's thing number one. Thing number two, when I would see that happen, it would be done kind of harsh in terms of the facial expression that you'd see the older gentlemen in the masjid give to the kids. Now, kids are very, very in tune to nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication meaning everything that you do and how you communicate with them, apart from the actual words you say. So your tone of voice, your speaking pattern, your facial expression, your body language. Kids are in tune to all that stuff, and they pay close attention to it without even thinking about it, and they make an interpretation of you based on it. And because they're not totally mature neurologically and they're not totally mature emotionally, they also kind of invent stories about it. So if you redirect a kid to not talk in the masjid, you snap at them, do this or whatever, you don't need to do it with a mean face. And by a mean face, I specifically mean a tense face. Okay, kids will listen to adults who appear to them as relaxed and in control of themselves. So relaxed doesn't mean that you're just letting them get away with stuff, but it means you're not letting yourself get worked up and emotionally affected by their misbehavior. So as a community, we should be okay with any one person redirecting the kids in the masjid to the appropriate behavior, certainly if it's during Jumu'ah or something like that. And if you see kids talking in the masjid, you can snap at them or stand up slow and look at them, give them the silent cue or whatever. And when do you want to do that? You want to do it as soon as you notice kids misbehave. Okay, this is a big mistake that adults make with kids. So you'll be sitting in Jumu'ah or something, you'll be sitting in the masjid, and two kids will start talking or whatever, you'll notice it. It will kind of be annoying you. You know it's not right. And what adults do is they hope then that it just stops. It never stops. When kids are misbehaving like that, it never stops, especially when they're talking. They like talking to each other. Especially in our community, they're very good at that. So not only will it not stop, but they will slowly get louder. And then another kid will get drawn into it. And it will get to a point where now they're, what started as them like whisper side talking, it will get so loud and annoying that now we have to do something, but it's like we got to do even more to turn it around. Whereas if you just put it out right away, it's easier. They're not as into the conversation yet, so it's easier for them to stop. Whereas if you wait 5 minutes, they've gotten the conversation all going now, so you can tell them to stop and they'll listen, but really they have that one more thing that they want to say to each other. So it's harder for them to stop. And that's the same with any type of misbehavior. It's best to put it out as soon as you can. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that all of you are shepherds. You know the hadith, yes? Okay, so I don't remember exactly, but a ruler is the shepherd of his people. The husband is the shepherd of his family. The mother is the shepherd of her family and her husband's household. Okay, so, of course, it's a beautiful metaphor. And maybe some of you have had experience herding animals. I don't know. I haven't personally, but it's something you can look into. But you imagine a shepherd out in the field has the sheep or the camels or whatever, and he's got to keep the flock going in a certain direction and keep it all together. Well, how is it going to get all messed up? It starts with just one going away, going off to the side. And if the shepherd just lets that one go off to the side, well, pretty sure it's going to turn into 2, 3, or 4. And once it's 2, 3, or 4, now it's a whole bigger operation to get them all back into the herd. Whereas if you just get that first one right away, then it all maintains. And it's actually easier for everybody. That is, in general, how you want to manage misbehavior with kids. Whether it's within a certain context, or if it's with things going on with them, you start noticing signs about them, changing or being different or worried about things that might be going on as they get older. Now, when it comes to kids in the masjid too, I'm not talking about kids who are under 4. And maybe to a more extent, kids who are under 5. Okay? Kids who are under 4 especially, they're going to have such a lack of impulse control that it will be hard. Like you're asking too much of them to get them to be quiet. So the littler kids, the toddler age type kids buzzing around the masjid and being a little loud, we just have to deal with that. Okay? It's really more for the parents to decide whether or not that kid can be kept quiet at that time, or whether or not running around is something he or she needs. Okay? So for those little kids, it's different. But for kids older than that, that in general is how you keep them listening. There is a general rule in teaching that has a neuroscience basis to it, that if you talk to kids longer than their age plus 1 minute, they'll stop, they will lose their focus on what you're talking about, unless you're really interesting. So a good teacher, if you're a teacher, you teach 7th grade, you got kids who are 12 years old, you don't go more than 12 minutes or 13 minutes without stopping and having the kids write something, or stopping and asking the kids to turn and talk to one another and share something. You don't go that long without having them do something, just to mix it up a little bit, because they're likely to get their attention cut off from what you're talking about. So the masjid learning, it doesn't exactly accommodate that, but with this pausing mechanism of when the kids talk, you can condition them to listen better. And even if they stop paying attention, the little ones, it's a good skill for them to develop and being able to listen in general. Okay? So that's a tip for the adults on how to get the kids to listen. Because where are we ever going to get with the kids if we can't get them to listen? And it's true, too, when you're having a one-on-one conversation with a kid. Okay, sometimes, kids, they get very defensive about stuff, and they interject, and they'll interrupt you. If they do that, when you're talking to them, just cut off what you said, And whatever sentence they cut you off at, when they're done saying their little thing, which won't be too long because they're just reacting to whatever you say, go back to the beginning of the sentence that you got cut off in and repeat it to them, but repeat it to them in a quieter voice. Why a quieter voice? Because doing it in a quieter voice, number one, shows you're calm. Number two, it shows that you've changed something about the way you're talking, so you're kind of paying attention to how they react, even though you're still saying what you were saying. And number three, it actually triggers for them to pay closer attention because they have to work a little harder to pay attention because you're speaking quieter. That's why at times when I've been up here and kids have been interrupting, sometimes I'll like cover the microphone or something to make myself quieter after pausing, because that helps to attune their attention. The other thing you don't want to do with kids when you're having a one-on-one conversation with them and you need to tell them something, you need to teach them a lesson, you don't want to let them sidetrack you. Okay, kids can be very good at letting them sidetrack you with their defensiveness. Okay, you want to talk to them about something they did wrong or something they need to listen to. They start getting defensive. They shoot something back at you. It's really a mistake to respond to what they said. And you start getting into these kind of, he did it, she did it type of conversations, or yes you did, no you didn't type of thing. And it's how arguments begin too. When kids talk back to you about something, or they interrupt you when you're trying to give them directions or you're trying to give them a lesson, they don't really have a whole bunch of logical arguments built up in their mind that they're trying to give you. They're just being defensive, and the ones who are more extroverted, the ones who are more prone to be verbal, they will just respond to whatever you're saying. And when you respond to them, then you're feeding their defensiveness and you're feeding them with things to respond to. And that's how things devolve into arguments. You understand what I'm saying? So I know I spent a long time talking about that, but that's general things about setting expectations with kids, getting them to listen. You need to know this type of stuff. Okay, so for someone who was here before, was there anyone? Well, if most of us were here before, let's review on some things I talked about. Some of the most important things I talked about. I'd like for someone to raise their hand. Tell me, so what was the main message that I gave to the kids in the last two sessions? Remind me your name and speak, please.
My name's Ryan, and last time we were talking about how you could be like a good Muslim in America, which is in a Muslim country, and teaching other people about Islam.
MashaAllah, beautiful. Rahim's your name? Yeah. Very good. Another thing too, guys, when you ask kids a question, another thing that teachers do who are inexperienced or adults, they often don't give the kids enough time to think of a response. So the time with which he raised his hand was actually pretty quick. Normally, you ask a kid a question, it's going to take them at least 3, 4, 5 seconds to formulate a response. For some kids, if it's a more complex topic, or if they don't speak English as their first language, maybe, it could be even longer than that. So you have to be patient with that. But thank you, Rahim. Excellent point. Being a good Muslim in America, yes. Name and answer.
My name is Saleh, and I know you're very important thing is that, if you have friends that are a bad influence on you, how to stop hanging out with them or how to stop them.
Okay, good, mashallah. Let me ask you something. When I talk about that for you, does that seem easy to do or hard to do? Kind of the middle, mashallah. And it's something to be thinking about. And you'll go through trials with that. Okay, very good. Someone else, what did I talk about? It can add on to what was said by one of these two young guys, or it can be something different. And an adult can answer as well. Something else that was said. Go ahead. Good, mashallah. Okay, the focus on fun in America, especially for youth. but really just people in general. Go ahead. Yes, please.
So how you saying that, how you're talking about America, like this was so in other countries, you were talking about how like everyone has a responsibility. There's stuff that needs to be done and everyone has to like actually do stuff. It's not always happening.
Good question. So for the people who weren't here and the adults who weren't here, what the previous two sessions and these sessions were about accomplishing in general. And really, for me, it's more something I'm trying to model for the adults than necessarily the kids taking it from me. Because to the kids, I'm just some guy, and I'll only be in their life so much. Okay, their parents, family members, really those are people they're much more invested in. But, as adults, we have to give the kids a story in their minds of what their life means being in this society. If we don't do it, someone else will do it for them. The school will do it. The entertainment industry is more than willing to do it. And it will be something that we don't like, and it will be something that's not good for them. So I talked at length with the kids, number one, about being the child of immigrants. Because I've taught the children of immigrants for a very, very long time in schools. And they need to understand the history of where not only where their families come from, but what it means for them to be different than their parents. Okay, because their parents, number one, usually came here for economic reasons. So that is the thing that they have to be most concerned about when they come here. And I talk to the kids about how they do have to worry about that, but when an immigrant comes here, a Muslim immigrant, and they have to be worried about economics, they have to be very self-conscious about how they sound in a job interview and whether or not people are looking at them a certain way because of their accent, just as an example, and many other things. And they can't take risks as much. And they develop sensitivities to being looked at a certain way because they have to maintain what they're trying to build here. And they're trying to build all of it from the ground up. Whereas the children have things set up for them. They have institutions set up for them. Parents get them in the school system. And they don't grow up with all the same insecurities. And I asked the kids whether or not they could read and recite the Quran. And all of them raised their hands. And I asked the kids, whose stories are told in the Quran? Who does the Quran tell the stories of? Who has their stories told in the Quran? It doesn't have to be him. The prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam. And those prophets, were they in lands of believers or disbelievers? They're in lands of disbelievers. So the Muslim children of immigrants who come here, they have a unique opportunity in their family history and a unique opportunity really in all of history to live out the life that the prophets lived, peace be upon all of them, the central mission. And they might not understand the Quran yet. Maybe they haven't read a translation yet, but they should be curious about doing that. And they should do that. And when it comes to everything that we want the kids to do as Muslims, if they're not connected to this big idea of them living in this society, being a mission, to call people to Islam, to teach people about Islam, and to take advantage of this huge historical opportunity that they have. If it's not connected to that, they will only experience the religion as restrictions stopping them to do things that they want to do, and giving them chores to do and tasks to do, and all the while there's other things that they want to be doing. And I talked to them a little bit too about how America is the most individualistic society that exists. So their parents usually grew up in a place where everyone had more responsibilities than kids are expected to have here. And a lot of times, coming here for immigrant families, it means that they did advance in the amount of money they can earn. A lot of times, that results in wanting to give the kids more, because everyone likes to see their kids be happy and having fun. We all like that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But that, combined with the media messaging, combined with the culture of teenagers, especially in America, which is based on media messaging, makes it so people get conditioned here to think that life is all about fun and having fun. And that amounts to looking at life in a way and basing the decisions of your actions on whether or not it is something you want to do. And guys, I want you to listen closely here, okay? You've been doing a good job sitting and listening, okay? Because the main thing I want to talk to you guys about today, who were here before, when you're in school, but when you're in any area of life, you always want to know why you are doing something. Something that happens with kids, something that happens with people, is they start going through life and they just start going with the flow of things. And you just start going with the flow of things, you get caught up in things, and all of a sudden you're reacting to things, and you're reacting to what other people do, and you're saying things that other people are saying, and all this type of stuff. And it becomes like this way that you're just acting, and you haven't even stopped and thought about why. You're going to mature faster. You're going to grow up faster. You're going to be smarter than other people if you always take time in life to think about why you are doing something. And what are some reasons to do something? What are some reasons that kids do things? Sometimes kids do things because their parents want them to do it. That is not a bad reason to do something. That's a good reason to do something. Certainly it's an Islamic reason to do something, because you have an obligation to obey your parents in Islam. Oftentimes kids do stuff just because other kids are doing it, or they're worried about the impression of other kids. And that is the big thing that we need to talk to kids about, developing a resistance to. And it begins inside themselves. And it's not easy for them. It's not easy because they spend so much time in school, and when they don't go along with what everyone else is doing, everyone is talking about this TikTok video, or everyone is going over chasing those kids who are fighting and trying to record it with their phones or whatever. When they don't do that stuff, kids will try to make them feel like they're weird for doing it. And we have to have knowledge of Islamic texts ourselves, because our religion teaches us about this. Because the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say about being strange? What did he say? It doesn't have to be one of the kids who answers, one of the adults. We talked about the last two. And they call it the hadith of the ghuraba, I believe, frequently. What did the Prophet, peace be upon him, say about being strange to the people? He said Islam came as what? As something strange, and it will come back as something strange. So give good news to the strangers. Allah says in the Quran, I'm going to just give the translation because I don't recite well. In Surah Al-Nisa, verse 140. Okay, listen closely here, guys. Okay, this verse from the Quran. He says, "And it has already come down to you in the book that when you hear the verses of Allah recited, they are denied by people and ridiculed. So do not sit with them until they enter into another conversation. Indeed, you would then be like them. Indeed, Allah will gather the hypocrites and disbelievers in hell altogether." Now, mocking the religion, this verse is referring to people amongst the Quraysh and the prophets, people who were actually mocking the religion or mocking the verses from the Quran. You might not see kids do exactly that in school, but when people are behaving in a way that is un-Islamic, and especially when other Muslim kids are behaving that way, they are making a joke of the religion because they're giving such little consideration to what it says. So when you go away from them when they're doing that, you have to know inside yourself that they might ridicule you, it might feel lonely, it will be difficult. And if you read the stories of the prophets, ﷺ, peace be upon all of them, their lives were difficult. But you have to take satisfaction in knowing that you are following the verses from the Quran. You're directly applying something that Allah told the Muslims to do. And being around so much un-Islamic behavior as we get in the society, and you'll see in schools, we're actually given the opportunities to apply that all the time. And we need to support one another in doing it. And when you ask yourself why you're doing something, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, all actions are based on their intentions. So it's a work for all of us, and it's not just for kids, it's for adults too. It's certainly a reminder to myself as well, that we have to constantly be striving to do things for the sake of Allah alone. And when you do something for the sake of Allah alone, it's difficult. And you will face difficulty. If you do something because your parents want you to, that's okay. That's accepted, that's good in Islam. If you do something because you fear what people are going to say about you, or you fear what people are going to think about you, that's not okay. Because that's going to lead you astray. When you do something for the sake of Allah alone, that is what is best. And with your decision making in school, your decision making about both the actions that you take as well as what you learn, you need to be looking at it thinking, is this something good in Islam or is it something bad? Or the stuff that you're learning in any subject in school, you need to be looking at it and asking, is this something that Islam accepts or Islam agrees it, or is it something that Islam goes against? And if you don't know, well, now you have the chance to go find out, and you need to try to go to find out with whatever resources you have. And ask your parents. And you should be telling your parents regularly what you're learning about and asking that. And if your parents don't know whether or not something you learn about in school agrees with Islam, then they can find out. And for the parents, the kids are in school 5 days a week. The Muslim kids in America really suffer by not being able to learn about Islam more. But this has to be a way that we educate kids about Islam. We have to respond to what the school gives them, and we have to help them know how to filter it through an Islamic lens. And we have to be checking in with them on a daily basis about that. Even better if the masjid can coordinate programs where the kids come here, maybe on a somewhat regular basis after school. I talked before about how parents have the right to review the learning curriculum of what kids are going to learn beforehand. If you're engaged with the school at that level, you can be able to anticipate the things they're going to be learning about and know how to have those conversations beforehand. Okay? Is that clear, guys? Okay? It's okay to say you don't know what to write if you have an assignment. It's okay to write something in assignments. I'm not really sure what my opinion on this is, because I base my opinions off of what my religion says. And I'm not sure what my religion says about this. Because I know they're always giving you assignments where they're asking your opinions in school. They do that too much in American schooling, actually. They ask kids to write about their own opinions, as if your opinion matters that much. It does matter, but it doesn't matter that much. What Allah says matters more. And when it goes back to what people base their decisions on, Bismillah. Increasingly in the modern world, but certainly in American society, kids get raised and they get conditioned to think that life is just about living out what they want or pursuing what they want. Okay, what you want is called your desires. Can one of you tell me what's the first pillar of Islam? One of you raise your hand. My guy, tell me, what's the first pillar of Islam? Good. What is the Shahada? Can you translate it into English? Do you know how to translate it into English? You can take a moment to think about it. We'll help you if you don't know. There's none worthy of worship except Allah, Allahu Akbar, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Good. Okay, what's your name? No, you did good, Sabr. Okay, Sabr, when someone worships something other than Allah, what is it called? What's it called when someone worships something other than Allah? Shirk. Allahu Akbar. Is shirk okay to do? No. And shirk is the worst sin, correct? Okay, it is the one sin in the Quran that Allah says He will not forgive. Do you guys know, basing your decisions off of your desires, for someone to base the way they live their life off of just what they want to do, that is a form of shirk. That is shirk. We talked before about how one of the chapters of the Quran is Al-Furqan. And one of the names of the Quran is Al-Furqan. Furqan means what? My guy, go ahead. Criterion. Criterion means something that tells you the difference between right and wrong. So it's not for us and our desires to decide between what is right and wrong. And all the kids out there who are just looking at everything they're doing in life, trying to have fun, just reacting to whether or not something's exciting or whatever, it's not for them to say whether or not you should do something based on what they want. Because to only follow your desires is a form of shirk. Your desires can be taken as a God other than Allah. May Allah protect us. Allah says in the Quran, Surah Al-Jathiyah, which is the 45th surah, verse 23. Translation is, listen closely, guys, okay? Allah says, have you seen the one who takes as his own God his own desire? Have you seen the one who takes as his God his own desire? So Allah says right there, you can take your desires as a God other than Him. May Allah protect us. And to only base your actions off of what you want, and to wake up every day just being concerned about doing what you want or doing what's fun and so forth. It is a form of shirk, and it is the form of shirk that most people in this society are involved in. Most people in this society, they're not very religious anymore. They don't take Christianity that seriously. Even many people who come from Christian backgrounds in the society, most people, if you really dig into it with them, they'll even grant that Jesus probably wasn't God, and they will say that they believe in God, and they believe God to be something similar to what the Quran says. That God is all-knowing and is a creator. That's what's natural for someone to believe God is. They often don't know that's who God is in Islam, or that's the God that we worship as Muslims. But they commit shirk in the second part of the Shahada. Because when you bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, that means that you believe that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, brought his message. And that message is the truth. So what that message commands, it's something you have to do. What that message forbids, it's something you can't do. Allah says, the translation is, have you seen the one who takes as his God his own desire? then Allah has left him astray due to knowledge and has set a seal upon his hearing and his heart and put over his vision a veil. And this is something you'll see in people. Okay, people who they become so obsessed with just doing what they want. When you try to call them to something that's correct or you point out the error in their way, they get extremely defensive about it as if they are blinded. So who will guide him after Allah? Then will you not be reminded? And when it says who will guide him other than Allah, the good thing when we go back to teaching people about Islam and exhibiting good character, so people over time and with patience, they come to trust you and what you have to say. The good news about all of that is you don't have to worry about whether or not someone accepts Islam. Because it's not for any one of us to guide people. Only Allah can do that. We just have to portray the message and teach people about it. That's it. And because of the dynamics of how your parents came here, it's difficult for them. But for you guys, you need to know that this is your life mission, along with everything else that you have to do. Bismillah. I'm not going to take up as much time today, but this idea of people worshiping their desires, I want you guys to know this well. Know it well, and it's a way you have to start looking at people and examining yourself. And you'll start to notice the foolishness of people who are just going about life following their desires, and they don't have something that they base right and wrong upon, and they don't base right and wrong upon what Allah says. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, pay close attention to this hadith, translation of it. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he said, the wise man is the one who controls his desires and prepares for what is after death. The foolish one is he who follows his desires and indulges in wishful thinking about Allah. And the thing about one's desires is your desires always change. They change in life and they change just in response to whatever's going on. So they make a person look like a fool that way. And when someone follows their desires, they're never satisfied. And if you look at the way that most kids act, and you ask yourself, do they act foolish? If you look at the way most kids in this society or in general act, and ask yourself, do they act foolish, you will see that. And the Prophet ﷺ, he tells you about that right here. The wise one is the one who prepares for what is after death. Making decisions for the long term, and the longest term decision making is preparing for what is after death. It always entails choosing to do what is right instead of following your desires. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, paradise, Jannah, is surrounded by, who can finish it? What's Jannah surrounded by? Jannah. Hardships. Hardships. Okay, paradise is surrounded by difficulty. Have you guys read a translation of the Quran? Front to back? No? You really should. You should try. You might not understand everything, get everything. You don't have to get everything. But you'll read about the prophets going after hardship after hardship after hardship after hardship. You read a biography of the Prophet ﷺ, you study his sunnah, you'll find him going through hardship after hardship after hardship. It's good to read because the hardships that we go through are like nothing compared to that. And when you go through hardships, knowing that Jannah is surrounded by hardships, that is something that remembering that, even if no one else around you is remembering it, it can build the inner strength that you need to make correct decisions. The Prophet's companion, Abdullahi ibn Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with him. And Abdullahi ibn Mas'ud, he was one of the companions who memorized the Quran entirely. And I believe he is the one who the Prophet nicknamed as, what is it, Tarjuma al-Quran? Like the interpreter of the Quran. It was either him or Abdullah ibn Abbas. But Abdullah ibn Abbas, I believe, is the one he made a special dua for to understand the Quran. I believe, I could be wrong, but Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is one who the Prophet named the interpreter of the Quran. Either way, his understanding, his teachings, he's one of the major companions of the Prophet. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said, listen carefully. He said, there are two things I fear for you the most: long hopes and following desires. Long hopes cause one to forget the hereafter, and following desires prevents one from the truth. And especially when you're young, I've talked a little bit about how teenagers, they will lie so much because they're worried about people's impressions of them and this type of thing. Al-Hasan al-Basri, may Allah have mercy on him, he said, your desires are the most harmful thing to you and the most detrimental thing to your hereafter. And a great scholar, Ibn al-Qayyim, he said, the foundation of every sin is love of this world and following desires. Thus, the heart will be drawn to desires and to this world according to the love it has for it. And it will abstain from the hereafter according to how much it shuns it. So the big message I want you guys to take today is you need to slow down in life. I think you guys probably will be disciplined enough to not always go with the flow of what other kids are doing. And with every decision that you make, you need to ask yourself why it is being done. And if the only reason is I'm doing this because I want to, if that's the only thing you ever make decisions about, that's not something that you want to do. Even if people tell you to just be yourself or to just do you, or people are constantly encouraging you to do that, it will lead you to hardship, and it's what causes people to be lost and led astray from the remembrance of Allah. And it is ultimately what leads people to the hellfire. May Allah protect us. So I say all this and I ask Allah for forgiveness. Anything good that I said comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything wrong that I said comes from the deficiencies within myself. I bear witness that there's none worthy of worship but Allah alone, and I turn to Him in repentance. So if we have some, should we take questions or take a break? Okay. If there's any questions someone had or anything you'd like to talk about, some of you guys who've been here a few times, so if you want to take the opportunity to make this more of a discussion, I'd be pleased by that. And bring up some things that you're curious about or that the community needs to do or whatever. Or if not, maybe I'll start asking about you guys. Why don't you guys actually tell me a little bit about yourselves, because you're the two who I didn't recognize coming in here today. What's that? Where? MashaAllah. Let me guess, you're studying to be a dentist. Medicine? No, sorry, what are you studying? MashaAllah. You're doing a degree in political science?
My second year in political studies.
Okay. Oh, really? I did my first degree is in political science from the U. Where do you coach? Okay. Okay, good. I've done some trainings with Mendota Heights. to their leadership this last year. The superintendents and actually all the principals. Did a little more intensive at one of the schools. What do you coach them in? MashaAllah. You gonna be a lawyer? Huh? Inshallah, you'll get the right answers to that. Inshallah. Married? Soon, inshallah. Soon, inshallah. Okay. Nice to meet you. So, okay, we can connect sometime. You have a lot, because debate, you need to manage the kids. What about you? What do you study? Do anything with kids? Did you guys graduate high school in Egan? Egan High School? Apple Valley High School? Or Eastview? I went to Eastview in 9th and 10th grade. And I technically graduated from Eastview, but you know the zoo school? I went to the zoo school. Yes, I went to SES, yes. It's one of those kids. But my home high school was Eastview. But that school, it was a good school, and it actually put me on a path that led me to Islam. It was 2002 when I graduated. And my father's an Arab Christian, so I'm ethnically Arab. I did not know any other Arab kid in that school district at that time. But now, at that time it was like 96% white. Now it's like 52% white or 55% white. Yes, Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is...
Well, first tell me your name, because I don't recognize you, sorry.
Okay. My name is Ibrahim Ismail. And my question is, as an older brother of like a kid that's like 10 years old, what's some things that I can do to sort of push them in the right direction because they're going to public school?
Okay, that's a good question. Do you live with them?
Yeah, it's my little sister. She's 9 years old.
It's a she?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, just with kids in general, you want to be calm with them as much as you can. They get into age 9, 10, 11, and 12, they're getting to the age where they really start to get annoying. And generally with kids, the taller they get, the more annoying they get, because they're still acting like kids, but people don't tolerate it once they start getting tall. Is she going into 4th grade? Okay, I taught 4th grade for 5 years. 4th grade is a very crucial year, I will tell you, because it is around age 9, 10. Kids who misbehave before age 9 and 10 or so, they generally do it out of a lack of impulse control. Okay, they're just so excitable and they have energy and stuff, so they don't follow directions just because they don't control themselves. But usually before age 9 and 10, kids, they want to please the adults. They want mom and dad to be happy with them. They want the teacher to be happy with them, and there's not really any debate in that. 4th grade is when there first starts to be some kids, not all of them, but some kids who start calculating that if I misbehave and I'm disrespectful, it's going to get me attention from other kids, okay? And the kids who will do that first are the kids who have the most emotional needs and they're not getting enough loving attention at home, so they act out in school because they need that. But they will start being like class clowns and making kids laugh and all that type of stuff. And those kids, they start to be the ones who actually have the most social influence in school. There's a whole dynamic about school that's difficult. The kids who have the most social influence are the kids who are the most troubled, because they're the kids who come to school looking to have their emotional needs met because it's not met outside of school, okay? Now, your sister probably will not be that kid. She's probably more innocent. But without realizing it, she might be the kid who laughs at that other kid when he does something goofing off. And when she does that, it's going to reinforce that upon the other kid. So, number one, before the school year, it's good to have a talk with her about how this is going to take place. 4th grade is when you should tell her, this year you'll probably see some kids who start misbehaving in school, in class, disrespecting the teacher and complaining to the teacher outright. And tell her, you don't want to do that, and when other kids do that, you don't want to pay attention to it, you don't want to give it attention or laugh at it.
And then this can be something that you check in with her about throughout the year, like whether or not that's going on in school. The other thing, too, that fourth graders do a lot is they complain a lot that things are not fair. Okay? They will complain about things being not fair a lot, both in school and to their parents. And that is an indication of their expanding minds because they can interpret things a little bit more abstractly now. But you kind of want to explain to them that, something that when they see things as not fair, they're only seeing it from a very limited perspective because they're young. And kids can understand that when you teach it. Okay? Does your family eat dinner together?
Yeah.
Daily basis?
4 or 5 times.
4 or 5 times a week? That's good. Okay, it's good to have daily check-ins with kids. Dinner is a good format for that. Okay. And, people, they struggle to get kids to talk about what happened at school. The way you get them going with that is you start with actually the first thing you do is you talk yourself about what you're doing in life or what school was like in your age. Okay? Because that just models for them talking about that. Then from there, you want to ask her like really simple questions about what went on in the school day at the beginning. Okay? Like, do you start the day with reading or math? Okay, give her, ask yes or no questions or questions where you give her 2 choices to answer. So that way she doesn't have so much to think about. Okay, what families do is they will ask kids, what'd you learn at school today? And then for the kid, it's like, okay, they had reading, they had math, they had science, they had social studies, they had gym, and then they learned all these different things. And they get overloaded by the question itself and just all the different answer choices. So then they just say, I don't know. What that actually means is I'm overloaded by the question, so I can't process an answer to it. That's what it means. So the way you just start to get the kids in the habit of talking about what happened during the day is you make the questions at first simple and easy for her to answer. And then you just build on that and ask about really, really concrete things. Okay, did you do they'll do reading at some point during the day, every day in 4th grade. Did you have reading time in the morning or the afternoon? Afternoon. Oh, did the teacher read to you guys or did you read by yourself? Teacher read to us. Oh, did you sit on the floor or did you sit at your desks? Okay, just simple questions like that. That will get the child going and just get them used to answering things. And then once you get them used to that, then you make the question bigger, like, oh, what book did you read? What was the book about? Okay? And that's really, I would say, that's kind of the biggest thing you want to get to when it comes to asking kids in elementary school about the school day. You want to get into what books did they read and what was it about. And whatever it was about, that's where you can now have the conversation about whether or not it's teaching something. You have to help them put an Islamic perspective on whatever they're learning about. So you maybe don't need to do all this as your older brother. Are your parents, where'd your parents grow up? Here or?
Syria.
In Syria, mashallah. That's where my ancestors are from. So sometimes parents who, immigrant parents can do this, they can. But sometimes they're not as used to doing this. And if they are not as familiar, but you grew up here? Yeah, so you're familiar with the school system, so you might be able to do this better. You get what I'm saying? And again, especially at that age, it's a good age to really get involved in. Because things socially at school are going to start getting complicated for her very fast over the next couple of years. And 4th grade is when it starts to trickle. It's not too bad. 5th grade is worse. And 6th through 9th grade are horribly toxic. So you want to be developing this repertoire with her now so that this is an ongoing thing. And I think I've said it in a session before, you cannot replace consistency when it comes with kids. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the deeds most beloved to Allah are the deeds that are small but done consistently. So this whole kind of talking to them, it doesn't have to be a whole big thing. But if it's consistent, it will really build up. And you'll develop a good relationship with her and be checking and all that type of stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? And always be calm and have a non-judgmental disposition with her so she doesn't get defensive about it or anything, And whatever she says, take it as an opportunity to teach her something. And just teach her. Inshallah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Anything from the sisters? Any questions? No questions? Okay. Anybody here? Any?
Everyone benefits if you ask a question.
All right, we got one here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brother.
For a great talk. My name is Hamdi. You already know. I was just curious in knowing at what particular, I guess, age do you tend to see kids, whether students or your own children, start to have that that mentality of having more discipline in making the right choices,
Yeah.
not just about religion, but just impulse control and things of
Yeah.
that nature. And how would you, as an educator or as a parent, help reinforce better behavior in that regard so kids can make better, more informed choices in anything in life?
Sure. Good question. So the question is, when do you start seeing kids kind of being able to take a turn to be more self-disciplined? And what can you do to encourage kids to be that way more growing up? So look, neurologically, you maybe know this. You know, the what they call the prefrontal cortex in your brain is the part of your brain that can override the emotional centers and use reasoning. And it's well known now that that part of the human brain is not fully developed, they will say, until age about 25 or so. So people struggle with it up through then, and really people even struggle with it after that. That's thing number one. With younger kids, though, I will say, teaching high school for a long time, you start to see something of a maturity breakthrough. I taught 10th and 11th grade for a long time. I would say, like, kids in the second half of 10th grade and through 11th grade, those are my favorite kids to teach. Because that is when they have matured to a point where they are like from that age 9 I was saying, like up to about age 15. The social dynamics will be that you get social power as a kid by looking like you defy adults, or you don't care what adults say, or you do the opposite of what adults say. That's when the kids will start swearing, okay, and they'll start getting into risky things like in middle school, this type of stuff. And the kids, again, who have the most emotional needs, parents have less control over them, they will do real risky stuff, and they'll talk about it a lot because they're going to get social power over it. Other kids will pretend they're doing really risky stuff and lie about doing it. That happens quite a bit too. But at about age, like the latter half of 15, 16 maybe, and girls mature faster than boys, you start to see kids mature to such an extent where now they can see an adult as someone that they can potentially connect with and benefit from. They maybe at that age will look for that more in an adult who is not their parent. Or it's very, very good at those ages for kids to have an adult in their life who is not their parent, who can maybe impact them in that way. A lot of people will remember a teacher being very impactful from like 10th or 11th grade or so, because that was the age where you were ready to receive something from an adult. Whereas the ages before that, it was just like, let's get away with not doing what the teacher's telling us to do, type of thing, So that is a very important age. And it's an important age for, it's like from 9 to 15, you, as a parent, you want to make sure things don't fall apart relationship-wise. I mean, I'll say just that, but you want to, you're treading water to that point. If you can get through up to like age 15 or 16 and the relationship is still good, then, you can get to a little deeper level with the kid, maybe, I would say. But they're going to be very, very interested in other people still at that age. For people where the relationship goes through some sort of breakdown before age 15, or the relationship with the parent is constant arguing, or just the parent constantly yelling at them, When they start to get into like 16, 17, 18, they will like really hit back in a more advanced way. And like parents where the relationship broke down before that, that's when at those ages they have the kid like, you know, running away from home, or like, you know, I don't want to be Muslim anymore, you know, even like age 19, 20 and get into that. So that type of stuff happens. And, you know, those, you know, so it kind of begins in 15, 16. And I say my favorite kids to teach were latter half of 10th grade versus 11th grade, because seniors are actually significantly more mature than juniors. But I always found them more interested in each other, and like they're interested in getting out of school kind of, so they're more interested in exploring type of thing. And it's from that age, like 17 to 20, where the kids become very kind of, their minds have expanded a lot, they can understand more, and they get open-minded at that age. And that can be good or bad, and that's why in colleges there's a lot of ideological competition for kids at those ages. So, you know, I say, I personally think it's good for us as Muslims to encourage kids, to make it normal for kids to take a year off after high school and just study Islam, even 2 years. Just so they can get a grounding in Islam, then whatever field they go into, they have that basis to set it up, because they normally didn't get enough of that education growing up.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Well, yeah. You know, actually, the second part of your question, though, about, you know, the thing is with training the kids to be more mature, the kids can be more mature beyond what you'd expect from their, like, developmental continuum. They can. But the goal is to kind of just prompt them to be a little more mature than you'd expect. Did you get what I'm saying? And, you know, like, kids will exhibit the behaviors that they get conditioned into. So, you know, like I was saying with the listening and this type of stuff, and, you know, you really have to show kids mature behaviors and have them practice it intentionally to a degree. You know, elementary schools at the beginning of the year, they'll spend like 3 weeks just teaching the kids how to sit and listen, how the appropriate way to walk in line is, and all that type of stuff. And, you know, if you can, you know, there's a really good book called Yardsticks, and the author's name is Chip Wood. It is what you should look up that book. That book is, it's about the developmental indicators of kids from ages 4 to 14. And for each age, it will show you what is developmentally normal, certain tendencies to expect, and this type of stuff. And kids are always like kind of in different spots along that, but it gives you an idea of like the general development of kids, what's normal, what's not normal, you know, cognitively, social, emotional, behavior, all that type of stuff. And, you know, when you have a good idea of that themselves, it's good to teach kids about this developmental stuff, because then you help prepare them for what they're going to experience. Any kids, certainly before middle school, you have to have a talk with them about how they're going to feel like this really intense peer pressure, because they are. They're going to start feeling it stronger than they felt it in 2nd or 3rd grade. They won't even know why. You know, it's because, you know, I mean, part of the way that kids develop, like as you get older, you get more of the ability to imagine what other people are thinking and to construct an image of that. So, like, they're getting that ability as they get into middle school, but they're still immature with it, you know? And they oftentimes construct what other people are thinking about them based on their worst fears. So, like, peer pressure hits them really hard. So, like, if you can explain to them and tell them that that is going to happen, even relate it to how it happened to you, now when that does happen to them, they will say, aha, this is what Dad was talking about. This is what Mom was talking about. And that enables them, that empowers them, that can enable them to override their impulses and act more maturely. It also positions you as the adult to be the person who knows what you're talking about when it comes to their growing up. So that makes you a safe person to go to talk about whatever is going on, or, you know, to get advice from. You know, Yardsticks by Chip Wood. You can get it on Amazon. Schools use it a lot. It comes from a behavior management training program called Responsive Classroom. that's common in schools on the East Coast especially, but some here. It's easy to remember because there's sticks, chip, and wood. Yardsticks, and the author's name is Chip Wood. But means yardsticks, like in terms of measurement. But any other questions? My guy, remind me your name.
Assalamu alaikum, my name's Adam.
Adam, mashallah.
So I'm just curious about cell phone use. I know you spoke about it a little bit in the first session, but specifically advice for students on how to mitigate it for ourselves and also for educators and like mentors and people like who are like older siblings.
Did you say cell phone use?
Cell phone use specifically in classes and like outside of it and stuff.
Yep.
First of all, how as it from an educator perspective, how to deal with students who are like kind of stuck to their screens, and then from a student perspective, how can we ourselves, be more disciplined?
Great question. How old are you?
18.
18. Okay. How was it growing up with cell phone use for you?
I mean, I remember classes where I was maybe paying attention for the first and last 5 minutes,
Right.
and the rest I was on my phone.
Yeah, mashallah. So for anyone who didn't hear what he said he can remember classes where he only paid attention like last 5 minutes. Now, did you go Wyzetta?
Yeah.
What's their policy supposedly at Wyzetta High School with cell phones? Are you allowed to have the cell phone in class?
There's a no phones policy, but the teachers don't enforce it.
Yeah, okay. So everyone has to understand that this is what is going on in the schools, bar none. The schools are saying they have a policy, no cell phones in the class. And they are not enforcing it because it is too difficult for the teachers to enforce. Okay, when every kid is doing something, it's too hard to enforce. So they will say, yeah, the kids can bring the cell phone to school, but they're not allowed to have it during class. They have it out during class. They're doing their little thing under the desk or whatever. They're sneaking it in, they have it. And hardly paying attention. And then they coordinate how to cheat on their assignments so they can get stuff done. And actually, a lot of kids are just going through school these days. So number one, as parents, I think all these sessions are going to culminate in us, we've already done some communication with ASIO, but we'll go to Wyzetta too. We need to strengthen our voice as a Muslim community, as parents in different ways, which we are doing, but not just about the LGBT stuff, but about everything. And we have the best interest of everybody, and we need to start insisting that there is a cell phone ban policy at schools. Meaning the cell phone is not allowed, period, at school, and if a kid has it, it's taken away. From what I understand, the UK is doing that nationwide because there is so much research that shows that that is what is better for kids. Now, in the meantime, parents, and a lot of parents, schools, when you bring this up to them actually, they will tell you, they will start putting it on the parents. They will start saying, well, I would love to have schools banned, cell phones banned at school, but the parents send it with them, and the parents message the kids during class. And a lot of times they do. And many parents, we feel this anxiety, like we want the kid to be there, so we want to be able to message them. So what you can do with that, look up Bark phone, B-A-R-K phone, bark like the sound that a dog makes, Bark phone. A Bark phone is a phone that you can get for just $40, and it looks like an iPhone. It has the big black screen. It looks like an iPhone or an Android. So a kid has it. He doesn't look like some kind of loser who doesn't have a phone or doesn't have a flip phone. And that's a whole other thing the parents are afraid of. They're afraid of if I say you can't bring the phone to school at all, the kid's really gonna push back and get into an argument because the kid doesn't want to look like the one nerd who doesn't have a phone. But a Bark phone, it looks like an iPhone, but all it can do is call and text. It cannot do anything other than call and text. And you can get a cheap monthly subscription for it just for it to call and text. So that's thing number one you can do with the kid. And inshallah, that will ensure that they're not on social media and stuff at school, which is important. Now, for the Somali kids in particular, something that the schools really do not know how to deal with the Somali kids with the phones. Because the Somali kids are the only kids who, even if one kid doesn't have a phone, another kid will give him his phone and he will say, here's the passcode. Yeah, go ahead and log in to your account on Snapchat on my phone and go do whatever you got to do on the phone. The Somali kids are the only kids who do that. which is great that they have that closeness and that trust with one another and everything. But for the Somali kids in particular, even the kids who are going without a phone, they are generally managing to get a phone from someone else and use it. So you can give the kid the bark phone, but that is still going to happen. And I don't exactly know what to do about that, except try to tell them. Now, some things that we need to be giving the kids a message about is understanding that, you're 18, you just got out of high school, you can already recognize what a problem the phones were, right? You're only going to recognize it more as you grow up. You realize how much of your generation has screen addiction. And many kids from your generation, they're not going to be able to become fully grown adults because of it. That even happened with the millennial generation, with my generation here, with video game addiction. There is about, somewhere from 8 million, 10 million men, middle-aged now, age 35 to 50, and they've not fully grown into adulthood. From our generation, might still live with their parents and not work a full-time job, and a lot of it is due to video game addiction. Because video games were the new thing when we were kids, but we didn't have them in our pockets. But some kids, they'd rush home, they'd come home and they'd play video games from 3 o'clock until midnight, and they can't live without it now. And that addiction affected them in such a way that they can't fully get into adulthood. Now, that was maybe like 5 to 10% of kids from my generation. Your generation is going to be like 30 to 40% people. You get what I'm saying? So we have to make kids understand that the more you can be away from a phone and have defined times away from it, it's just going to be better for the health of your brain. But it's very, very difficult for kids to make those long-term decisions. But it's probably the easiest way to get ahead of everyone else in your generation who you're going to be competing with over time. We can also explain to kids too, it used to be in the society, and I'm old enough to remember when I was little, where people would smoke cigarettes in public almost everywhere. Restaurants used to just be all smoking. They eventually went to smoking section, non-smoking section. Now they're just no smoking. But, why did that change? Because they know from the negative health effects of secondhand smoke. Asthma is not nearly as big a problem amongst kids nowadays as it was in the 90s. Because kids have grown up with so much less exposure to secondhand smoke than they did when I was little. Now, for a while, though, through like the 60s and 70s, adults knew the negative health effects of smoking, but they didn't do anything about it. You understand? The same thing is going on with the cell phone use now with adults. The negative health effects of it are known. And we're not doing anything about it as adults. So your generation will. You get what I'm saying? So, if you can, again, like encouraging long-term thinking, kids don't do it well. So they just need to have it messaged to them constantly. You need to constantly remind them about it. And inshallah, making a little bit better decision than the average kid is better, And look, this hadith about following desires, making someone foolish, the kids who are addicted to TikTok and they're following everything on TikTok and all the stupid stuff with people lip syncing and the rap videos and the fighting videos, okay, you're just looking at a bunch of people looking like a bunch of fools. And you're just being a bunch of fools. And it's okay, it's okay to just name that to kids. That's what kids just need to know. Just don't be a fool. Those kids, they think they're being like tough and edgy and independent, but they're actually the biggest fools of anybody. Because they've been brainwashed. So that's the type of messaging that kids need in the community especially. It's a good question.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rayyan, and you mentioned how you had a Christian Arab dad. What was your road to Islam?
MashaAllah. Ryan, you guys brothers? Look just like. Where in Syria is your family from?
Halab, New Halab specifically.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I became Muslim in 2007. I was studying the Muslim world when I was doing my political science degree at the University of Minnesota. So my father is the grandson of Syrian immigrants. So I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened, and I was Arab, but I didn't really know what it meant to be Arab because I didn't grow up connected to the culture. My father's extended family lives in New York, and even my father, you know, when his grandfather came in 1912, the culture of Arab immigrants who came at that time, they were 90%, maybe even more than 90% Christian. And Arab immigrants at that time, they assimilated into American culture as quickly as possible. And if you're not aware, at that time, there was actually a debate in the society, which became a legal debate, about whether or not Arabs were going to be considered white people in the society. And all the incentives were on the side of being considered a white person at that time. So they went about trying to be as white American as possible as soon as possible. So by the time you get to my father's generation, the Arab culture, my father grew up, he eats grape leaves and kibbeh, but other than that, there's nothing in Arab culture in him. He doesn't know the language or anything. You get what I'm saying? So when 9/11 happens and the war on terror happened and the Arab world was like really present in the news, and I'm around all these kids, you know, all my friends and stuff, and they know I'm the only Arab kid and this type of stuff. And, you know, I felt like I needed to know about what was going on. You understand? So when I went to the U, I was originally doing pre-law and was going to be a lawyer, but I switched my focus in political science to studying the Muslim world. So I studied the 20th century political history of the Muslim world. And I learned a little bit about Islam from university classes, but I was not satisfied enough with what I learned. And actually, guys, that's a good lesson to take from learning in general. Just know that whatever you learn in school, the best learning will not be what someone gives to you. The best learning you will do will be what you seek out yourself. And even the Arabic word for a student, you know what it is? Anyone know what it is? You know what it is? The Arabic word for a student is talib. Talib. Now, talib means like someone who seeks something or something who orders something. I believe when you order food at a restaurant, they call that, it's the same word, isn't it? Yeah, talib. Okay, like you ask for it. And we talk about seeking knowledge in Islam. Because even though I was studying the Muslim world in college, like, you know, you're learning all this dumb political theory and all this type of stuff that's just useless, you know, more or less. But it became apparent to me, it's like, well, you can't really understand this part of the world if you don't understand this religion that everyone practices there. So I became very curious about it. You know, at the same time, of course, I was in tune to what the media was all saying about Muslims at that time, which was worse than it is now at that time. Because Muslims did not have as much of a voice, they didn't have as much social media, and people in general were less educated. They're still undereducated, but it's better now. So these nasty things being said about Muslims all over, and the immigrant Somali community had a big impact on me. No one gave me dawah directly. But when I was at MCTC, before going to the U, I had a lot of classmates who were East African immigrants. And I found them to be more mature, and even knowing the subject matter better than me and my other classmates who were like from the suburbs. I remember taking an American civics class at MCTC, and you have these East African immigrants who know more about the structure of the US government than those of us who grew up here, and we were supposed to learn all that in high school. And then when I moved downtown, I lived in the Loring Park neighborhood, just a block down from Nicollet and 15th Street. And at that time, there was a coffee shop, a restaurant, and a grocery store, a little convenience store, all run by Somalis on that corner. And I'd see them socialize and how they had community and all that type of stuff. And I'd go into those establishments, and they were very polite and everything. So I saw this thing, like, you know, I knew they were Muslim by the way that the women dressed. So I was going through this dynamic where I was like studying politics and hearing all these nasty things that the political culture and media culture are saying about Muslims, but I saw very different behavior from the community that was around. So it just made me realize there's something more to this than what is being said by the media. So when the spring semester finished in 2007, I would walk from the campus to my apartment downtown because I didn't like taking the bus because I get motion sickness. So I'd walk through Cedar Riverside, And I stopped in a bookstore in there and I told them I wanted to get an English translation of the Quran. And I remember the brother had to go get a box from the back and open it up. And he gave me a translation, the Abdullah Yusuf Ali translation with the annotations, which is written in like the classical English script, which I like that translation personally. Everyone looks at it nowadays and they think you need to have it in more modern language or this type of stuff. Personally, I don't like that, but kind of need a different translation for different people. But anyway, so the summer of 2007, I was like reading the Quran. And I just knew from reading it that I wanted to accept it. It took me about 2 months to know how you become a Muslim. So it was actually in September 2007 on the first night of Ramadan when I took Shahada. Because I had met an Ethiopian brother who had a chiropractic office next to the restaurant I was working at. And I told him I wanted to become Muslim. And then he took me to the masjid, Masjid al-Huda, across the street from Holy Land, if you know that. That's where I took Shahada. And if you know Sheikh Jamal bin Amur, who is the imam at the masjid in Minnetonka now, he is who I took from Shahada from. It was quite a beautiful scene, to be honest. And he, before doing the Shahada, he explained to me the hadith on how the first night of Ramadan, all the shayateen are locked up and all the angels come out. So it was really pretty cool. So that was how I became Muslim.
Jazakallah khair. I have one question from the sister side, just going back to the cell phones. What advice can you give parents who have young teens who are looking to get a phone in order to be accepted, as part of the, how can parents approach that so that, they don't have a phone yet, but the peer pressure of getting a phone is ever so present. So that was a question that was brought up, just to guide the parents there in that regard.
Yeah, it's tough. Number one, overall, excuse me, sorry. Overall, it's better to wait as long as you can. Okay, like there'll be some struggle with that, but in general, it's better to wait as long as you can. And there will be a point where the resistance is so much, and there might be a point where the kid earns it per se. And as the kids get older too, and they get involved with more activities and stuff, and they're maybe not as home as much, I understand the anxiety of wanting to be able to message with them, all that type of stuff. Okay. But look, when you do get it, just have lots of restrictions on it. And in general, you need to put a lot of structure into kids' lives. It's better for them than just letting them go with things. Certainly kids who are middle school and early high school age, they need a lot of help with organization in their lives, especially boys, but a lot of the girls too. Many kids at that age get overwhelmed by all the different class subjects that I have and stuff and all that type of thing. They need a lot of help with organization. So when you get the phone, get it, but under the condition that you're going to have control over it. You will know the passcode. You will know all the logins. If they're going to have social media accounts, it's best to start with like an account on Instagram that's private only. And they follow like you and all this type of stuff, and you have access to it with the password and all that type of stuff. And then they have the phone for a certain time period of the day. Okay? They come home from school, maybe from 3:30 to 5:30 they can have the phone. And then after 5:30 it's dinner and then homework time, or homework time and then dinner and then bedtime. Within 2 hours of bedtime, definitely not. But 2 hours a day, maybe 3-4 hours a day on the weekend, they have a set time frame where they can have the phone. That is what works best. If it comes to them bringing the phone to school, like I said, it's better to give them that Bark phone. You can get both that and an iPhone. The iPhone's for home, and the Bark phone is for school. And then you can communicate with them, all this type of stuff. And, they will not look cool, and kids will not like them for that. What you can do is apologize for that. You can say to them, I'm sorry that hurt you. You can empathize with that. Let them know that you understand that it's difficult, and you're sorry that it's difficult. but you are making a decision because you truly believe that it's best for them in the long run. And as your parent, it is my job to make those decisions for you. Okay? And when you're doing with that, it's going to make the kid upset. He or she's going to get like all worked up at you and this type of stuff. When your kid gets like that, you just need to stay relaxed. Okay, that is the most important thing. In those middle school, early high school ages, the big mistake parents make is kids are extremely moody at those ages, especially girls, but the boys too. Okay, there's hormonal reasons why the kids are moody at that age, and neurological reasons as well. So the kids can just be fine for a moment, and then in a moment they're like flaring up. When they do that, you have to not take it personally, which is very hard when it's your own kid, because you're very in tune to your own kid's own emotions. And you have to stay relaxed with kids, and don't get into arguments with them. Don't get into arguments with them. They say this, they say that. You just say, I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. And I'm doing it because I love you, and you stay calm with them. If you get all tense with them and you get worked up with them, you're gonna spiral the whole relationship downhill, because it will never stop. And the kids get very advanced in it. And try to explain to them these things concerning health. Okay, scientists know, psychologists know, medical experts know. It's not good for the kids' health to have the screens all the time. It's not good for their brains. So you understand that it's a difficult decision, but it's a decision you are making out of love for them. And you can say you'll thank me later, because they will thank you later, inshallah. And sometimes it's the way it has to be with kids. You have to wait for the payoff further down the road, because we have to do the long-term thinking for them as best we can. Any other questions?
Any other questions from anyone? Otherwise, we have one last comment, and then we'll end it there, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan. I like what you were saying about delaying phones as much as possible. If anything, I have just a quick recommendation or an option that people can consider. If you want the connectivity and being able to track your kid and want to avoid giving them a phone for push it out as much as possible, one of the options people can consider are these watches that, effectively it has a phone line, you limit who can call, who texts, and there are no apps on it, and you can track where they're at.
Do you know the name of one of the brands that does that?
I'm pretty sure T-Mobile and AT&T, each one of them have options that they can offer. Yeah, they're child-specific ones.
Do those things have GPS tracking too, so you can know where they are?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jazakallah.
Or you can do even Apple Watch nowadays. They have one of their models. It's designed where it can operate independent of a phone. By itself, it is a phone.
Yeah.
You can restrict it with a phone, etc.
MashaAllah. So the brother, for people if they're watching a video or they didn't hear, he's saying you can get these watches nowadays too that just have call and text on it. They don't have other apps and stuff. And you can use the Maps app and track where they are with it. Also too, parents, you should know with the iPhone at least, you can have the kid under a family plan. You can set time limits on when they can be in apps, and it will shut down on them and all that type of stuff. You want to get familiar with all that type of stuff. If a mother or a parent out there, you want help learning about that type of stuff, because I've known lots of parents working in schools where if their English was not good or this type of thing, they maybe were dependent on the kid to help them with the phone. So if we want to do a session that just focuses on phones, and we can teach parents about the different things you can do with phones, we can do that. And let the brother know, because we can arrange for that and this type of thing. It's obviously a big topic. You have to know their logins, okay? And the thing is, if there's just a limited time when they have it, and then it comes to you, you can check to make sure they haven't changed the password and stuff every night. And if they change the password, then they don't get it until they tell you the password. And you have to go in there and check what they are watching and who they are messaging with. Okay, the messaging app on Snapchat, that is probably the most toxic place for kids. TikTok's pretty bad too in the Instagram Reels, and just the messaging app on the cell phone too. But
Jazakallah khair. We have a couple of snacks for everybody. So I think we just want to thank you for
All praise is due to Allah.
spending the time and looking forward to. So just as an announcement, Brother Abraham won't be here next week, and the week after we have the youth barbecue. So look forward to continuing this session from 2 weeks from today, inshallah.
Jazakallah.
But yeah, yes. It's on the 20th. It hasn't been announced yet, but you guys get the privilege of knowing about that ahead of time. So yeah, let's go back to the dining hall and just get a couple snacks and drinks for everybody, and inshallah call it a day.
Give it.